Sorry about that. You ready? We're live.
All right, good evening, everyone. I will call to order the July 10th, 2023 meeting of the Newtown Township Board of Supervisors. I will note that the board did meet an executive session where we discussed the following matters with regards to litigation, 2 magisterial district court actions brought by a resident related to easement and property damage related to the public sewer project, and a tort action brought by a resident related to a scooter accident. We did discuss a personnel matter with a personnel matter involving discussion with the police contract police contract expiration. With that being said, I will ask Mr. Nease to please call the roll.
Mr. Altieri,
Present.
Ms. Roberts Lightcap,
Here.
Mr. Partridge,
Here.
Mr. Russo,
Here.
Ms. Chandler.
Here.
Your solicitor, engineer, and manager are here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nease. We will now move into the moment of silence. And we will stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. We'll now move down to section 5, which is the agenda 5.1. Can I get a motion to approve? Actually, yeah, I'm all over the place. Yeah, consider the motion to approve the agenda. I do have an addition to it, though, or a correction to it. In section 16.1, we need to revise this to read, consider approving resolution 2023-23, preliminary/final land development for the Veterans Memorial Hall at Morville. And 16.2 should read, consider resolution 2023-24, preliminary/final subdivision and land development for the Stony Knoll development. So I will make a motion to approve the agenda with those corrections. Is there a second? The motion was made by the chair with those additions in there or corrections, seconded by Supervisor Russo. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. We'll now move down to public comment for agenda items only. If you are a member of the public and you have any agenda items, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Let the record reflect that there is no public comment at this time, but I will note, however, a very happy belated birthday on July 6th to Supervisor Ed Partridge. So there you go. Happy birthday, Ed.
Happy birthday, Ed.
There you go. I could have waited till board comment, but then no one would have been here to wish him a happy birthday. So we have to make sure we get it out now. We'll now move down to section 7.1. Can I get a motion to consider approving the minutes from the June 26, 2023 meeting? Motion was made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Chandler. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Section 8, resolutions of recognition. Can I get a motion to approve resolution 2023-21, recognizing Michael Savitski's year of service? Supervisor Partridge.
Resolution 2023-21, recognizing Michael Savitski's years of service. Whereas the Board of Supervisors of Newtown Township, Delaware County, Pennsylvania, wishes on behalf of the citizens of Newtown Township to publicly recognize the service of Michael Savitski to the Newtown Township community. And whereas Michael Savitski has served on the Newtown Township Police Department since September 11th, 1982. And whereas Michael Savitski served the department as a patrol officer and was promoted to lieutenant in September of 1987. And whereas Michael Savitski received 3 life-saving awards, 5 meritorious service medals, 2 exceptional duty citations, 2 honorable service citations, 3 distinguished unit citations, good conduct award, and numerous letters of thanks and appreciation from the public and surrounding police departments. In addition, Lieutenant Savitski is a recognized member of the DuPont Kevlar Survivors Club, He also received a master's degree from St. Joseph's University. And whereas Michael Savitski served as the department's firearms instructor, less lethal force instructor, first aid and CPR instructor, member of the Delaware County Major Incident Response Team, deputy commander and the Central Delaware County Tactical Response Team, and coordinator of the township's youth aid panel. And whereas Michael Savitski retired on May 21st, 2023, after nearly 41 years of service to the Newtown Township community and the Newtown Township Police Department, and now therefore be it resolved that Newtown Township hereby recognizes the longstanding public service, dedication, and commitment to the residents of Newtown Township demonstrated by Michael Savitski, adopted this 26th day of June, 2023. And that's my motion.
Motion is made by Supervisor Partridge. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Supervisor Russo. Is there any board discussion? Just like to say is, obviously we're saying this already with the adoption of this resolution, but to thank Lieutenant Savitski for his years of service to Newtown Township. I believe he's already enjoying his retirement by relocating to the beautiful state of Florida. So I guess the sun isn't too bad down there. With that being said, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. We'll now move into presentations. 9.1, St. Alban Circle traffic flow, Mr. Sharretts.
Good evening, George Sharretts, Director of Public Works. We're here today to just update the board and the public on the work at St. Alban Circle, and also to ask for your feedback and direction on the latest design. St. Alban Circle is an area that has been considered for traffic calming and promoting pedestrian access. For the past few years, there have been different tests done by various groups at St. Alban Circle to work to accomplish this. The slide that you see up on the screen now shows the original configuration of the area, with 2 lanes going from Westchester Pike into the circle and 1 20-foot wide lane leaving the circle. Speeding was a primary concern that was reported to the township, which got this whole project started. Slide number 2 shows the configuration tested by Gathering the Circle and the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, intended to work on calming traffic and promoting pedestrian facilities. Slide number 3 shows what was done after that testing was completed, and we went to restore the circle to its original configuration. However, with the permission of the board, we did maintain the 3 crosswalks and the associated elements with them, and we also enlarged the southern traffic island so as to create only 1 lane going into the circle from Westchester Pike, and also 1 smaller 13-foot wide lane leaving the circle heading to Westchester Pike. It also made possible the potential for a future crosswalk on that southern side. As this traffic pattern was having a positive effect, the board then gave permission from us to Public Works to test 1 step further, and we painted the island a green color to start getting an idea of visually what it could look like if it was converted to grass as opposed to just asphalt. Slide number 4. In the meantime, while this was going on, the board authorized the township to install LED streetlights in the surrounding neighborhood and at the circle, with the purpose of further encouraging and supporting pedestrian access for the homes and the businesses in the area. And that was completed in May. Slide number 5. With the initial success of the traffic pattern, we requested authorization for the township engineer to investigate the design of a permanent large island and crosswalks at St. Albans Circle and St. Albans Avenue. You gave that permission, and Public Works then met with Pannoni out there and got the work started. While the traffic pattern was working extremely well, Pannoni observed, and they were absolutely correct, that the lane going from Westchester Pike into the circle was a straight shot. And the same thing was the case on the lane leaving the circle heading to Westchester Pike. And unfortunately, some folks would then still take the opportunity to speed because they had a straight line and they could do that there. So it was proposed to eliminate that straight line in the next proposal and to carve out some of that island green space and push it to the sides. So the final slide, slide number 6, shows the proposal before you today. It was developed by Pannoni and Public Works, and the township recommended to you for consideration. And Eric, if I misrepresent anything in the discussion, just stop me and feel free to correct me. The concept plan redistributes the proposed green space in a way so that traffic can still move through the area unobstructed, but it's going to be forced to follow our speed limits. It still incorporates the proposed pedestrian crosswalk on the Westchester Pike side of the circle. All trucks, buses, and emergency vehicles have the necessary room to navigate the area. And the curbs are designed to be mountable so that if an emergency or some other need comes up, vehicles would not be impeded in getting through there, again, in an emergency. Plus, the design creates a bit of a visual separation between the circle and the Westchester Pike area. It also permanently creates those small triangular islands along with their crosswalks at Rhodes Avenue and at Chapel Road. At this time, the focus of the plan is on the southern side of the circle. We know well that there are needs on the northern side, but we would propose addressing them as a next stage. The southern side is the primary concern right now. So this is the concept that we present to you today. We're hoping for some feedback from the board and some direction as to whether you would like us to take it further. And I would invite Eric if there's anything that I missed or anything you think that should be brought up.
No, I'd say I think that was a pretty good rendition of how we've gotten to here. I would say this layout is while a final design will look very much like this, we would still go in and refine the curvature and make sure all the vehicles are flowing through appropriately. But really the intent is to take that wide throat on the south side of the circle, which is just a straight shot from Westchester Pike, and actually force a vehicle to come and make actually curve towards the circle and then enter it at a slower speed. It also is coming out of the right aid, that is a band left that comes out of there. And we know we have a lot of people that are disregarding that, and it causes traffic issues. This creates a dedicated turning lane in, and that also prevents cars from making that left turn out, which would require someone to go into the circle and make the turn like you're intended to at that driveway. So,
George, do you happen to, I'm sorry, do you happen to have a hard copy that I can see? I'm sorry, usually I print stuff out, but I was away and my eyes aren't so great. Just of your last
Yes.
one, sorry. It's hard for me. I'm sorry, usually I have all, no, I usually have all the copies, so thanks.
So, George, one question I had asked at the last update was with the traffic exiting the circle, coming up to light at Westchester Pike. By restricting the road space, which is part of the objective here. Do you foresee any issue with cars queuing up and traffic backing up into the circle from Westchester Pike? Or, is the light time such that there shouldn't be any concern with that? In other words, what I'm saying is if they queued up enough and then backed into the circle, I mean, it could cause issues. Part of the circle's tied up.
Yeah, and that's a very legitimate concern. And Eric and I did talk about that. Eric, do you want to respond to that, or would you
yeah,
like me to?
so actually he had brought that, you had mentioned that before. So I guess two parts to it. The first part is there's the signal permit plan for the intersection at Westchester Pike, and that has the vehicle stacking lanes that go back to a certain point. On that plan, we actually have, there's the stacking lane, and then where these islands would begin, there is actually some separation there. So we're not interfering with the lanes. But if we were to think this was a concern and we want to potentially add a little bit more stacking where a car could come down, and then you could stack some more cars into those dedicated left-hand turn lanes, we actually can pull that island back a little further, and that would allow for stacking a few more vehicles. That would not have any detriment to what we're trying to achieve here. But all of that said, intently, the purpose of this work is to really try and, make the circle more for vehicles that are passing through there because they want to go to a destination circle.
Do you think we should put something temporary here, which box this out and test it for, I mean, do all the other work or, possibly, but except for that last piece.
I mean, it's
And,
possible to, let's say, we could put in, if we did all the other work, that last island, if we installed it, if we didn't make it as large, if we pulled it
Right.
back towards a circle, there is always there's the possibility of extending in the future. Like if we see it's not causing an issue, you could start smaller and then
Right.
put in bollards to try and design it or come back in the future. like a
And of course, I'm not an expert. I have no idea whether, whether this could happen, whether it could, based on the timing of that light and the volume of traffic, but I don't know if the other rest of the board members have the
That is
same
the one-
concern.
That would be my one concern, because that is the part that gets, I mean, for me, when I'm driving, where it gets backed
starts
up the
to
most.
queue up, yeah.
I will say that, I don't know whether it was Eric or George's team did go sit out there and watch. And based on where these markings were, that was not an issue during the time in which they watched. That's not saying it wouldn't happen, but only was one Kathy and you were driving.
We have
Maybe
sensors
we
on the
need to
front
get
of
you
our
guys smaller
cars, right,
cars.
to make us.
But no,
stop red light.
seriously, I mean, we have looked at it and because of the concern that was addressed. And that's the reason why Eric has said that we could make that section smaller today and see what happens. And just cut it back, still have it, not eliminate it completely, but still have it, but make it smaller as a starting point to allow further stacking.
Or even put, I don't know, or some, remember that.
Yeah.
What are they?
Yeah. The
Extend it with.
the bollards,
Bollards.
yeah.
Put them in there, extend it, put them in there and then see if we have the issue.
Yeah.
I mean, that bottom island, it gives some green space, but the real reason for that island is to stop that difficulty we're having with cars making that illegal left. But really, that island only has to be a fraction of the size that it is there to achieve that. So if we were to really pull that island can be pulled back, still achieve that objective and have and still we could add, stacking for another, I think it was 6 or 8 cars at the end of this turning lane.
In my opinion, that would probably be the better way to go. But so in that same area where you're talking, so it's single lane for a certain period of time and then so it doesn't allow people, how there's that one section where you go straight into the bank which never gets backed up, but you have to be able to get there.
Right, so I'll
go
show
right.
this, when you're approaching the intersection, there is the 3 lanes here. The dedicated left, and then this one is a through and right-hand lane. So these both turn left. This is the one that comes straight through and then also turns right onto the pike.
Eric, can you answer? How many car lanes do we think we have right now?
On that green
On
space.
this,
In that green space, so you're talking about in here?
yes,
So it was, I think I had someone, when we took a look at it, if you were to cut back this, you could fit, I think it was another 6 to 8 cars could stack in this area here. If we were to truncate this back, really to stop this left, this island really needs to go about that far. So we could thin this out and get all the stacking back, all the way back to here.
so if you are okay with us doing that, I think that's what we're hearing, your concern. And then,
So would you want to cut back 3 car loads, 5, 6?
Right, well, and just to ask Eric and George, in that area, do we find that people are trying to rush to get through that to beat the light? I mean, I'm fine with Kathy and Ed's suggestion to kind of keep that back. I mean, the whole purpose of this was to slow people down, correct? Slow drivers down. So if that is gonna, because it does look kind of tight in that area. So I'm fine along with that. I think they're right, maybe to do that, because it does, sometimes it could back up. And I know you have to do traffic counts and all that other stuff. I do have a question about, so then what happens, how many car lengths, let's say I'm turning into the right aid before that traffic light. How many car lengths is that to hold? Is that 2 cars to queue to make the left into the right aid?
I'd say you probably have 2 cars. So in that, you'll have cars gonna pull up and they'll probably start to make that left into the channelized island, and you could probably have one more car back behind there.
Do we take into account that on that corner, behind Rite Aid is a developable property? Is two gonna be enough? Because don't they share that? Am I right or wrong to think that they would share that entrance? They're not owned by the same people. Are they owned by the
Right,
same?
and at this point, the only way into that back parking lot
Uh-huh,
is through that Rite Aid area. There's not a way to get into it from Rhodes Avenue.
okay. They don't have a curb cut at all. That
They,
back
they
property.
don't, I mean, if anything was ever to happen with that property, they
Uh-huh.
probably want to come in off of Rhodes Avenue, but as of right now, there's no curb cut to get into
No,
it.
there's
Okay.
not.
Yeah, because we're thinking future developments and things like that, trying to mitigate any kind of strange occurrences. We have signs, right, George, at our crosswalks?
We do.
We do have pedestrian signs at the crosswalks.
Yes,
And then the new crosswalk would be from the old Remax property, what you're proposing. This is a new crosswalk with these curb cuts,
that is correct, yes,
and they would have signs, correct?
they would.
And then the crosswalk on roads, that's a proposed crosswalk, or is that one there now? This would be a new one with curb cuts?
So both the ones at Chapel and the ones at Rhodes are currently in existence.
Uh-huh,
They were added as part of this process and they've worked well, so we've kept them there. But the islands there would become permanent, and again, the crosswalks there would become permanent. They wouldn't just be painted areas.
okay, because on this, it doesn't say that crosswalk is new at Chapel. And then we still have do we have a crosswalk across, what's the name in front of Bunny Hairs we have a crosswalk there.
There is, yeah.
And then that'll be the next phase.
Exactly. So there is a crosswalk there currently. I decided I wasn't going to present the northern side of
Yeah.
it just because I knew there was a lot to digest on
Yeah.
the southern side.
And then around the circle, we're putting in that's striping, correct? Around the
Around
circle.
the circle. So what that is shown as to be striping, and now it could be just pavement marking, or you can get more designing with like the patterns. But that is just designed to be a flush, just trying to truncate the travel path for vehicles to travel in a more defined path around the circle.
Yeah, because and then on the other side, that north is that we refer to it, that's a little bit more complicated because you've got those driveways that really should be sidewalks that really are not, and they go to the street, and that's gonna be something that's gonna have to be dealt with.
Exactly.
So, and I know, George, you've been wanting to work on this for a very long time, even before Gather was involved, and they helped kind of jumpstart it, but I know that you've been working on this project for a very long time, so I think it looks great. I'm just concerned about the left into the Rite Aid, well, we can't do anything about that now because we don't know what that new development would be. So I'm just I agree with Ed and Kathy about maybe skinning up that one piece.
I ask
Just.
Okay. kind of jumping off of what Supervisor Roberts, like I've just said, just for clarification. So around the circle itself, where you're seeing it as kind of, they look like little squares. My understanding was that was going to be a sort of like, it's not going to actually be painted, but it's going to be new material that is like drivable. You can drive on top of it just in case, like a drivable curb, if you will. Am I correct in that?
I think it was envisioned as almost the kind of crosswalks that you see in some of the sections of Ellis, that it looks like brick and it's got a texture to it,
Got it.
but it's fully drive overable.
But it's not going to be, so it's not just being painted. It's actually new material that's going to be that's going to be installed around that circle.
Exactly. I think it has a texture to it.
And I apologize, George, if you said this, which I'm sure you did, but everything that we're seeing with green, that is not going to be paint like we have. It's going to be actual grass, correct?
Exactly. And I'm presenting it as green space. My first recommendation is that it would be grass. I didn't want to get into, well, what kind of plantings are in there. The sense is it's grass, it's green, it's not asphalt anymore.
And I think that's probably wise. Let's get it in, let's get the grass going, and then we can start talking about beatification afterwards, or beautification afterwards, excuse me. We're not talking about making it a saint here. It already is, right? Just to echo what everyone else is saying. I mean, I have no problem with it, and I'm fine with it.
Great.
So maybe one more question. So where Remax is, Do we have any idea what might be going in there?
I've heard multiple different things. But I have not heard
So-
anything lately that's a set thing.
Throwing out a what if, obviously with Remax, there's not a lot of traffic coming and going into that property, you know. But if some other kind of business came in and, you know, where you're pulling a volume of business in and out of those parking lots, that could change the, you know, situation, you know, on that side of the circle.
Well, and it
I
would.
don't know if we can plan for everything, but
And it would probably even further necessitate slowing the rest of the traffic down so that whatever business was in there would be able to have access to their parking area without worrying about speeding.
okay. Good enough.
Thank you, George.
Great
Thank you.
feedback. Thank you.
So based on your feedback, are you comfortable with George and our engineer taking the next steps and doing what they can and going through that? Okay.
Yep, just that minor change.
Thank you.
Do you want to specify how much they're gonna, do you want to spend?
So just to-
specified how much smaller that one island has to be, like, just so everybody's in
Two more
agreement?
car lengths, I think we talked about, isn't that
What
what?
was it? I thought it was. we
I
were
think-
talking 6.
Eric,
mean-
what did you say? How many more?
So I
can
think
get?
we I believe that island gets pulled back. Yeah, I think it was somewhere between, it was about 6 car lengths, but I think we can go with the direction of, we can pull it back as much as we can to still maintain what we're trying to do and have the minimal impact on the stacking. Right? Yeah, so our next step will be taking that concept plan into actually the right curvatures and the perfect alignment of it.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? And more comments? Perfect. We'll now move down to the reports. Report from the Township Manager, Mr. Nease.
Yes, I just have a couple quick things. The first one is we received a letter from our conflict solicitor, Raffaele Puppio. They have been requested to be engaged by the Marple Newtown Joint Recreation Committee or Commission. And because they represent you, and then that's a potential conflict, they're asking for a conflict waiver. And asking for you to move forward, asking if they can move forward with representing them, even though they are your conflict attorney. If you agree to that, you'll be saying yes, that I can go ahead and sign the letter for the waiver. Is the board acceptable to that?
I believe, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Sikora, but so just for those listening, municipalities have conflict counsel. You always have a solicitor and then you have a conflict counsel. For example, if there's a curative amendment that comes up, you need one attorney to represent the township, you need another attorney to represent the board. And so that's the reason why you have conflict counsel. Or if, let's say, Mr. Sikora's firm was representing a property owner in the township, him being the solicitor, it would create a conflict. And so the conflict counsel would step into those roles. So conflict counsels are extremely common and normal place. My understanding is that Mr. Sikora looked at this. It is unlikely that there will be a conflict between the township and the Marple Town Joint Recreation Board, which is why, I think that the board will be fine with waiving that. But I just wanted to make sure that everybody was clear on the role of the conflict counsel and what it is that we're being agreeable to, which I don't think there's any issues with.
I'm fine.
Perfect, thank you. The next thing I have is something that we've done multiple times, but I want to share with you just in regards that because so you understand why we're being asked this. Goshen Fire Company has their annual county fair. They ask our fire police to show up, and you would say, well, what do we care? It's the fire company and it's separate from us. The issue has to do with the fact that we cover the workers' comp. So if something happens, that's why it's before you. We've done this in the past. I'm assuming that we don't have a problem with it again, but I just wanted to verify that with the board and make sure you're all okay with that. All right. The only other thing I wanted to give you a report back, obviously, we had a tremendous amount of rain over the weekend. And I think we measured close to 3 inches at our house with the rain gauge we had. I've heard it could be as high as 4, depending on where you were in the township. Obviously, we had some areas that expressed their normal concerns that we have when we have that much water. But as a whole, George and I talked today, I think we had about 3 or 4 trees that came down and our team came in and removed those over. Mostly, I think that was just yesterday that was the problem. So our team has been in taking care of that and everything stayed open. We haven't had any real major. I've realized people might have water in their basements and that's major, so I don't want to make light of it, but there was not township property damage or anything like that, or anybody who we felt like had a loss of, injury or to themselves or to their beyond that. So I just wanted to let you know that, and our team handled that over the weekend.
Any questions for the township manager? Seeing none, we'll move down to section 11 bills, 11.1. I reviewed the bills and I will make a motion to approve the bills on check register A dated July 10, 2023, totaling $226,500.18.
Second.
Motion was made by the chair, seconded by Supervisor Robert Lightcap. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. 11.2, I have reviewed the bills, and so I make a motion to approve the bills on check register B dated July 10, 2023, totaling $65,591.51.
Second.
Motion was made by the chair, seconded by Supervisor Robert Lightcap. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. 11.3, again, I've reviewed the bills and I'll make a motion to ratify the bills on EFT register dated July 10, 2023, totaling $1,421.52. Motion was made by the chair, seconded by Supervisor Partridge. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Section 12, we have no public hearing. Section 13, new business, 13.1. I get a motion approving the request for a $575 fee waiver request, a special event permit and sign permits associated with all township permit costs relative to the Pints in the Square event on September 16, 2023. Motion was made by Supervisor Russo, the motion was made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Partridge. Is there any board discussion? I just have one. And I apologize, I didn't talk about this, or didn't get a chance to talk to you about this before the meeting. My understanding from the fire company is that they applied for a permit to put up their banner that they put up last year, I guess, at the corner of Altieri Boulevard and Westchester Pike. I think it was denied. So does this encompass that? It's the same exact permit it's the same exact permit they filled out for the same exact sign that they got last year.
I think we got special permission from you.
Okay.
And so if you want to do that, I think we should be specific and say that you are allowing them to advertise at that location.
Okay. Is everybody else in favor of that?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we'll do is I'll just amend this to say, consider approving a request for a $575 fee waiver request, a special event and sign permit associated with all township permit costs relative to the Pints in the Square event on September 16, 2023. And you don't want to do it? There you go. I like when you step in.
Leave it at the waiver fee.
Okay.
And the enforcement is only the second.
Have the administration work through it. Sounds like a plan. All right, so the motion was made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Partridge. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you for that, Mr. Spore. 13.2, can I get a motion approving the $175 fee waiver request from Gathering the Circle, specifically for the farmers market for the additional banner that will be placed at Drexel Lodge Park?
Second.
Motion was made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Chanlis. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. 13.3, can I get a motion approving the advertisement for the 2023-2024 salt bid?
Second.
Motion was made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Partridge. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. 13.4, consider authorizing Newtown Township to advertise a request for bids for the Bartram Covered Bridge Timber Trust and Foundation Repair Project on behalf of Newtown Township and Willistown Township.
So moved. Second.
Motion was made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Russo. Mr. Neese, this seems pretty self-explanatory. Do you need to add anything to this?
Only if you have questions, we'll
I have
address
none.
it, but this is the project we've been talking about. We've set some money aside, both us and Williston.
Perfect. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. 13.5, can I get a motion to approve to retain the Cohen Law Group to assist with the franchise renewal with Comcast as recommended by the Township Solicitor? Motion is made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Partridge. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. 13.6, discussion and possible action relative to the unexpired term on the Bartram Bridge Joint Preservation Commission. Mr. Neese.
Yeah, so sadly, Dan Littman, who served on the Bartram Bridge Commission, passed away about a week and a half ago. I think it was maybe 2 weeks now. So the way the Bartram Bridge Commission is set is that you have 2 members that you appoint. There's 2 members that Willistown appoints, and then there's a member that is appointed by the commission itself that rotates every 2 years between Newtown Township and Willistown Township. Mr. Littman actually was serving that rotating position. And so he was in that. And so his term would actually end in December. The ordinance that was passed related to Bartram Bridge between Newtown and Willistown states that if there's a vacancy in that specific position, that you all would recommend 2 potential candidates to the Bartram Bridge Commission, and then they would select from the 2. And that's set up. And if you're asking for recommendations, I can give you 2 recommendations.
Who are the recommendations, Mr. Neese?
So the recommendation would be Mr. Rosario Scalia, I believe is how he says his last name. He was on the Bartram Bridge before. He's now on your historic commission. And I understand he would be willing to potentially serve for that short period of time of about 6 months. And then the other person would be Larry Fisher, who's on your finance committee, but he also serves on the historic commission. Both of them are very familiar with the bridge. I think they could do that. I think the real importance of having somebody is with the other that you just advertised to go out to bid. You might have some discussion and need to have a 5th person on the board. So that's the reason for that.
Perfect. I think they're both 2 good names. So
Want to make a motion to nominate Larry Fisher and Rosario Scalia as nominees to serve the vacant term on the Bartram Bridge Joint Preservation Commission. So that we present these 2 names to that commission, so they make a decision on a replacement based on those 2 names.
Second.
motion is made by Supervisor Partridge to put forward Rosario Scalia and Larry Fisher for the Bartram Bridge unexpired term, seconded by Supervisor Chandlis. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Section 14, old business, we have none. Section 15, land development approval. 15.1, consider the application of Joyfor Newtown Village LP for preliminary/final land development approval related to the Veterans Memorial Meeting Hall on the northeast corner of Westchester Pike and Alice Boulevard. They are represented this evening by counsel, Mr. Donald Petroza. I will now turn it over to you and let you introduce your team and get your hearing underway. Just make sure your microphone's on, Don.
Here we go. I'm here representing Joyfor Newtown Village LP, the owner of the property, and Delaware County Veterans Memorial Association in Newtown Square, the tenant. With me are Nicole DeBaton Robinson, and also Neil Kamens, a professional engineer with Chester Valley Engineers. And there's some veterans here. I'd like to, with your permission, just introduce a few of them. Joe Daly is the president of the board of the Veterans Association. He's a Vietnam veteran. Reverend Justin Cohen is a chaplain. He's served in the Gulf War. Ralph Galati, who is a board member. Ralph is. And Bob Spano, I believe, was as Marine veteran, is that correct?
the color guard and the veteran guard.
Thank you. We're here seeking preliminary final land development approval for plans dated December 1st, 2022, last revised June 5th, 2023, for a proposed meeting hall and community building with related improvements. The proposed Veterans Hall will be adjacent to the existing Veterans Memorial located at Westchester Pike and Alice Grim Boulevard. Just I'd like to tell you just a little bit about the intended use of the property. It will obviously serve as the headquarters of the Veterans Association, and they'll have their board meetings there. They'll have some committee meetings there, but they also hope to be able to open certain activities up to the public. They have a library, special collections that on occasion they may be able to open to the public and invite the public in. They may be able to have some lectures, some movies on military type topics that the public could be invited to as well. So it's an educational thing in that it's going to be used for, in conjunction with the memorial. Sometimes there will be a tour. It will enable people to get out of inclement weather in the event of inclement weather. And it will have a bathrooms, a kitchen, a large meeting hall, a very small office. And there's a lower level, which is partially below ground, which will be primarily for storage. And we view it as a community building for civic purposes with the rooms that I've described. And what we would like to do, I want to hand up some exhibit packets. There's not a lot of exhibits in them, but I thought it might be helpful just in case it's. So the plan, I picked sheet 3A of 12. I don't know, Steve, if you wanted to put that up on the board, but it's I think it's easiest to see the improvements. That 3A, sheet 3A of 12. It should be the fourth sheet, Steve.
No, and while they're trying to find that, I know that right now the parking lot is not finished. It's not a completed parking
Right.
lot. So is part of this phase one, because the plan that they're looking for, I guess, is got the one that I'm looking at. Is this going to be that now we're going to macadam
Yes.
the rest of it?
It's going to be, they're going to be paved spaces. So what the plan shows is a very small building. It's got a footprint of 1,617 square feet. So it's not a large building. And then it shows a parking area, and there are a total of 37 parking spaces. 7 of them, I believe, are handicapped accessible spaces, and 30 that are not handicapped accessible spaces. And it shows a proposed access drive that connects into Drive B to get back out to Alice Grimm Boulevard, which will greatly improve the circulation, especially for larger vehicles. There's a bus pull-off area, and then there's the fire truck. The fire marshals looked at this. He had a couple of minor comments, and we do have to tweak it just slightly to meet his comments, and we've agreed to do that. Yes. So we've agreed to tweak it to meet the fire company's
But
comments.
the existing entrance will remain.
Yes, yes, it will.
I'll
But
let you make your presentation. I just thought I'd fill in.
okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cause a problem with trying to find the.
Don,
correction.
to continue to fill up the space, and the reason for the buses, just so everybody's clear, is because you guys.
I
have
think that's it.
schools.
I think that's it. That looks like it right there.
And Don, the reason for the buses, while they finalize that, is because you all do presentations at schools, correct?
Yes,
They're school buses, right?
and there are also, there's some large events that occur, as you know, there are different ceremonies and things that happen, and it just, but you're right, it's part of the educational program, yeah. So really, it's just the building, it's the parking area and the proposed access and then Drive B, and there's some landscaping that's proposed with it. We have a letter from John Rockwell Hosbach approving the landscape plan. I think that's dated June 9th. He said that we've addressed all of his comments, or he had no further comments. And that's basically the plan. We also included in the packet elevations. And I know there were elevations that were submitted earlier, way back in January. And then more recently, the architects are always tweaking the plan just a little bit. And they tweaked it in response to a comment I think Eric had. He wanted to see one particular view, and they're very similar to what they were before. And these are not the colors on the building. The building has like a stone veneer, and the stone is supposed to match the color of gray and the color of black in the memorial. Like there's some gray granite in the memorial, and there's some black marble, and it's supposed to be similar to that in color. So that was the second exhibit, which was A2. And then we had a letter is exhibit A3 from Chris Young, who I believe is a deputy fire chief, but also happens to be involved with Veterans Administration. And it's just a letter in support of the application. I don't intend to read it, but I did. I don't know if the board had already seen that or not, but I did include it in the packets. And we did obtain a variance from the zoning hearing board to allow the corner of the building to be 21.6 feet from Alice Grimm Boulevard. I don't want to bog things down, but there are different area and bulk requirements, whether if you're a lifestyle village or if you're not a lifestyle village. And the zoning hearing board did grant, the zoning officer felt we needed a variance for that issue. And we went to the zoning hearing board and obtained that variance. So we're seeking preliminary final approval subject to satisfactory resolution of the engineers' review comments in the Pannoni June 19th, 2023 letter. And I would indicate that Eric did include in that he incorporated the fire marshal's review and also the landscape review. So we would have to comply with that as well. And we're actually, with regard to the Pannoni review, I think we're fine with the comments that Eric has. I don't think we need to go through them unless you'd like us to, but basically we think we can resolve all those comments with Eric. And that's basically what we wanted to present to you.
So you will comply with most of the review letter?
Yes.
Eric, is there anything specifically that you want to make the board aware of? Or are you fine with the representation that Mr. Petroza just made?
No, I think we went through some pretty good detail, actually, even within the planning commission about the review letter and how they're going to proceed with addressing it. So I don't think there's anything left that would preclude them from complying with the letter.
Perfect.
Are there any signs proposed for the new building?
I don't believe so. I haven't seen it. No. I don't think so.
Okay, so the formality aspect of that seems to be done. You're also going to do, will comply with what you said with Mr. Hosbach's review letter as well, correct?
Yes,
The
he
landscape
indicated
architect.
we already do comply with his comments, yeah.
All right, perfect. Question for you, looking at that plan, so is that, just out of curiosity, the center sphere there, what are we putting in there? A flag? What is that?
I'm going to defer to you if.
Looks
I
like
know,
Miss
and I'm
Miss Robinson is biting at the opportunity to say. Perfect. Okay. Any questions from the board? I mean, it's pretty cut and dry, I think.
I think on the review letter, it says about, because it shows a proposed on one of the sheets that I have, shows a proposed three-story building. That's not part of this application, correct?
No, it is not.
We're just gonna, you're fine with that, Eric, the way that they're gonna take this, or, make it so that the plans reflect what we approved today.
Correct. I believe that is one of the review comments. I think we discussed at the planning
Yeah.
commission that they're just gonna.
We're gonna,
strike those
that's why
sheets
we
out.
wanted to show this sheet. This
Yeah.
sheet's
Okay.
all that's gonna be built. We'll clarify the other to the satisfaction of.
Okay, so that
Fair,
will be
that
what
we're-
we actually, when we approve, it'll be that sheet, not the sheet.
I think the original plan showed a phase 2, and those improvements were removed from some of the plans, but Eric was pointing out that they still appeared on 3 or 4 of the sheets, and we're
Mhm.
going to take them off.
Okay,
And
Just-
the proposed approval resolution specifies that anything that was put on there for informational purposes, future planning purposes, is not subject to this approval as well.
okay, so that's in our resolution. Okay.
Yes.
Wanted to be clear.
Any questions from the board? Any additional questions I can take from the board? Are there any questions or public comment from the audience? Okay, seeing none. I will make a motion to approve resolution 2023-23 preliminary/final land development for the Veterans Memorial Hall at Marville. And I will read the resolution. So resolution,
First paragraph, the whereas clause.
Yep.
And then I would just switch that, skip all the way down to now therefore.
thank you, Mr. Sikora. Resolution number 2023-23 preliminary final land development approval, parcel number 30-29-022.00. Westchester Pike, Delaware County Veterans Memorial Meeting Hall. Whereas Joy 4 Newtown Village LP developer has submitted plans to approve an application for preliminary/final land development for the premises of parcel number 30-29-022.00 Westchester Pike on an approximate 55.913 acre site, the master site at the northeast corner of the intersection of Asgren Boulevard and Westchester Pike, related to the development of a 1,637 square foot Veterans Meeting Hall and associated parking and access drives accessory to the existing Veterans Memorial on a small portion of that master site, the project site, as set forth on plans entitled Preliminary Land Development Plan for Marville Newtown Square Veterans Memorial Meeting Hall, consisting of 25 pages and dated December 1st, 2022, and last revised June 5th, 2023, along with post-construction stormwater management report and storm drainage calculations, at the same dates, and a drainage area plan dated December 1st, 2022, collectively the plans. Now therefore be it resolved, the Board of Supervisors of Newtown Township hereby resolves and conditionally approves the aforementioned application and plans, subject to and conditioned upon the following. 1, this approval is limited solely to the Veterans Memorial Hall and associated parking and access drives and parking and supporting infrastructure, and all other future development and or future development depicted on the plans, with the exception of the 3.4 acre Marriott Hotel project with associated infrastructure approved by resolution 2020-13 and the existing Veterans Memorial and Prayer Chapel, are conceptual only, and the approval of the plan does not in any way approve or endorse any other structures or infrastructure that may approve on the plan. 2, with the sole exception of the hotel development and supporting infrastructure in accordance with resolution 2020-13, Any portion of the master site configured in any way, including grade, slopes, stormwater management, and any other similar changes to directly support the development of the Veterans Memorial Hall as depicted on the plans, will not be further disturbed without the township land development approval, whether or not such change would ordinarily require land development approval. 3, the applicant must comply with and satisfy the concerns set forth in the Township Engineer Review Letter of June 19, 2023, the satisfaction of the Township Engineer, and comply with the representation set forth in the June 5, 2023 Chester Valley Engineer Letter. 4, the applicant must also comply with the following. A, give strong consideration to the recommendations of the Delaware County Planning Department as set forth in its review letter related to future development. B, give strong consideration to the recommendations of the Environmental Advisory Committee in its June 16, 2023 letter. C, the comments of the Township Fire Marshal and Arborist review letters. D, the applicant will construct the meeting hall in conformance with the May 12, 2023 elevation drawings prepared by Goza Architects LLC, unless otherwise approved by the board. E, any and all plans regarding sewage conveyance facilities and decommissioning of his existing sewage facilities must be reviewed and approved by the Newtown Township Delaware County Municipal Authority and/or its engineer. F, applicant and/or owner will obtain all necessary sewer planning approvals and permits with the Department of Environmental Protection and the Newtown Township Delaware County Municipal Authority, and will enter into such development, connection, and financial security agreements as they shall require. G, compliance in all respects with the applicable township codes, ordinances, and regulations, as well as any applicable county, state, or federal regulations, and obtain necessary sewage planning approvals. H, applicant shall post financial security and execute a developer's agreement and financial security agreement and post financial security pursuant to the MPC and township code prior to applying for or receiving permits, all of which may be executed by the township manager upon agreement of the township solicitor and township engineer. And I, preliminary final approval is contingent upon payment of all outstanding professional fees / escrow replenishment within 45 days of approval, except as properly challenged in accordance with the MPC. 5, the following waivers are also conditionally granted with this approval. A, section 148-12 for joint submission of preliminary / final land development approval. B, section 148-43B4 to allow HDPE stormwater pipes. 6, the township manager is authorized to sign any agreements on behalf of the township as necessary to effectuate this approval. Resolved this 10th day of July, 2023 at a public meeting of the Newtown Township Board of Supervisors, and that is my motion. Motion was made by the chair, seconded by Supervisor Russo. Is there any board discussion? The only thing I will say is, as we have noted numerous times from the Board of Supervisors perspective, we are extremely honored that this project is in Newtown Township. I think that the Veterans Memorial is an extremely beautiful memorial. I believe the board also feels the same way. It is great specifically what this memorial does with the young people by bringing them in there and educating them about the sacrifices that were made, but also just what, American history, unfortunately, is either not taught properly, sanitized to, correct or to make people feel good. And I think it's great that the Veterans Memorial is pushing forward with the true history and being able to provide real life examples and to have the veterans be able to educate the students themselves, I think is extremely important and honorable. And I know that we just celebrated 10 years. Supervisor Robert Lightcap and I were there for the laying of that time capsule. So I thank you all, not only for your service to this country, but for the continual service that you're doing to our county and community by having this project here in Newtown Township.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say that this board is very, very dedicated, and we do appreciate that, including your service. So you continue your service to your country, and we really appreciate it. And thank you for letting us be a part of this as well. So thank you.
And with that being said, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Petrosa.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The waivers. There are waivers.
No, we just did that.
Oh, we put a part of it?
Yeah. And Chief Daly, you can remind the Springfield people how to run a proper meeting. They can take some lessons from Newtown Township. Yeah. Well, if I did that, Nicole wouldn't be too happy. So I wanted to make sure, we got this done. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so now we will move down to section 15.2, which is the application of James A. Nolan, the Third Dynasty Trust for preliminary / final subdivision and land development approval related to the proposed 17 lot subdivision known as Stony Knoll on the south side of Wayland Road. By way of background and just a refresher, if everybody remembers, Mr. Nolan and his engineer, Mr. Gade from Stantec, were here last month. There were questions that the board had with relations to the fire marshal's comments as it applies to the water line. The board wanted the fire marshal to be here so that they can ask some questions. The way that this is going to happen tonight is after I give that summary, Mr. Gade, if there's anything you feel that you need to supplement, you can supplement it. We'll then go to the fire marshal who will present his rationale essentially for why the pipe issue is being required. The board will then ask the fire marshal questions. Then we'll let Mr. Gade for you to come on and present your side of this application, if you will. We'll again continue to ask questions, and then ideally we make a decision. Good, this room isn't packed, so I don't suspect this will turn into a kangaroo court, but in the event that emotions start running high, hyperbole and antics aren't necessary. We can all be adults and have a nice educated conversation, which I think we will. I have no doubt that we will have. I will also note, as was mentioned last time, that Pannoni Associates is not the engineer of record on this. It is McCumbee. So Mr. Porter is here as the township's conflict engineer and will answer any questions related to engineering. With that being said, Mr. Gade, do you have anything you need to add or supplement to the summary that I kind of provided there? Just come to the microphone. Wherever you prefer. We can go to the table. You can go to the table if you want.
The only thing I would like to add is the numerical value of it's 2,450 feet extension of the water main along the existing White Horse Road. That's it. 50 feet.
2,450 feet of extension. All right, Mr. Keene, the floor is yours, sir. You can either go to the table or the podium, whatever you prefer.
Whatever is good for you.
Make sure that microphone's on.
Yep, it is.
All right.
I don't think I need it, but we'll do it anyways.
For the people who are at home.
I understand.
Yeah. So Carl, I guess I'll punch it off. The board had questions on the requirement for the 2,450 water line. If you can just kind of go through, we're not fire suppression experts, we're not fire marshals. So I think the board, and everybody can correct me if I'm wrong, just wants some clarification on that.
Right. So basically what we have here is the water main that feeds the area comes from Goshen Road, goes through Echo Valley and runs up to Hunt Valley Lane right now. There was in the 80s, there was an easement the township obtained to run the water main up there to provide fire protection water for Melmark Home. And that's how that water main got installed. So that's over a mile of dead end water main. And we continue to add more and more homes to this. And it becomes a situation where we may or may not have water because we already had water main breaks that have basically isolated that area with no public water whatsoever for drinking and or firefighting. So that was the reason for it. And additionally, the White Horse development has a dead end water main coming from Easttown Township through Pebble Spring Road to White Horse Road. So there's two developments there that have no backup water, so to speak. If we have a water main break, they're out of public water and firefighting water. So that's the process. This has been going on since probably 2008. I've been recommending this for various subdivisions. That's pretty much what I have.
So, Carl, if there, assuming current situation, there was a fire, if this were not installed, where would the fire engines tap into presently?
Presently, there's no water mains other than Hunt Valley Circle, Hunt Valley Lane. There's only a couple of hydrants up there. There's 3 total, I believe.
Okay, and then what's the distance to them from them to the development? Does that present would that present a challenge or?
Well, I mean, with the develop, they're gonna add water mains in there, I guess, because they're gonna have public water in there, so they will have fire hydrants in there. It's just, the whole question is looping the water mains, tying the White Horse Road water mains to the new water mains that are gonna be installed for this development, which go back to Echo Valley Lane.
Yeah,
You had, I believe in your review letter, tied the extension of this water line to the length of the road that's proposed by the app. Township code allows 750 feet of a dead end road. There's, I think, 1,900 and some odd feet proposed. And you had, in your review letter, mentioned that as being a factor in your recommendation. Could you explain what you mean by that?
Well, yeah, so basically, the township ordinance only allows a 700-foot cul-de-sac, I believe, correctly. This is 1,700 feet of dead-end cul-de-sac. And the thought process behind there is like two ways to feed the fire flows. I'd be more apt to use that length instead of not having it at 700. We could go to the additional 1,700 feet, that there's 1,000 feet that's added. So that was the thought process behind it.
so is it and I'm not a fire suppression anything. So with that point, so because there's a longer, because we're allowing, because one of the waivers is for a longer cul-de-sac. Does that mean that if that water line is not in there, there's a potential that there's not enough pressure to supply the fire company, or are we also, is that one issue? And then the other issue is that if a water main breaks, then that whole entire neighborhood is not being serviced.
That's correct. The water main breaks, it will not have any service there. So I'll have to bring tanker trucks in from all over Chester County to fight a fire there. If currently there's enough water, if it's a dead end line to.
And a dead end line, sorry.
It's a dead end line, so it doesn't extend, so it's a long run, a dead end water main just stops.
Yep.
Okay, there's no other way to feed it, so it's a one directional flow.
Got it.
So it's like a one-way street.
Yep.
So that's basically what you're dealing with here. So what I'm suggesting is tying both together and make it a two-way street, so if this one goes, this one's still there, so I have two ways to feed
Okay.
water to this development.
So can I just ask, so do the other neighborhoods then in the township have multiple ways to feed the water?
Yes,
Okay. So would this be the only one that wouldn't have that then?
well, not all of them, there's some areas that have been developed prior to me being available to review these things. There's a lot of areas in town that don't have public water. For example, Bishop Hollow Road, south of here, doesn't have public water.
So that's what you meant when you said that you've been doing this since 2008. It wasn't necessarily to this project. It was ensuring that there's a loop for all of
Right.
that. Okay. That makes sense.
It's basically redundancy and then having, a good infrastructure basic in place.
Can I ask our solicitor, because I know that there was an approved plan before for cluster homes. I forget what the other approved plans that we had done, and I don't think that this water up before.
It
So,
actually, it
or it
actually
did?
did, yeah,
Okay.
so, I don't remember with the.
2015.
Yeah, there's this particular subdivision has been proposed 2 times previously. One was for a smaller lot, but more lots, like 27-ish, 28-ish homes. I don't remember if this issue came up during that one. But the following year, after that was approved, the applicant decided to reduce the number of homes to approximately 13. And at that one, I know this became an issue because that was a condition of the approval. The board put some wiggle room in the approval resolution and said, well, you can, we understand that you don't like or object to this particular provision. So we'll give you the opportunity to meet with the township professionals and have a meeting. And if you can convince the township professionals that an alternate way of dealing with this is acceptable, the administration has the authority to make that change, and the approval resolution could stand with that change. That meeting occurred, but no resolution was reached. So this loop that Mr. Keene is talking about remained a condition that triggered the new application for more lots, because there's an increased cost to the developer. You need to spread that cost over more lots. That's my understanding anyway, is why we're back here. It was originally 18 lots. And then after some environmental reviews and some discussions with the applicant, he agreed to scale that back to 17 lots. So, but it still doesn't fix the issue of, do you guys remember if this was an issue in the very first application, this water loop?
The 27?
Yeah.
Well, there was a 27 lot subdivision, and we did show a extension up to White Horse Road.
It did, so it was on the
And then-
first one too.
Correct. And then the 13 lot subdivision came in, and we showed an extension through our subdivision and down around connecting to Hunt Valley Lane. And that's what Mr. Keenan was talking about. That's still not a loop, more of like a dead end circling back. But it was approved that way with the condition that we do discuss it. And if you don't mind, there's one other thing, I think there was a mistake done here. The waiver for the length of the cul-de-sac didn't have anything to do with the loop. It had more to do with being a one-way and the access for the fire. So what we ended up doing is we ended up making the road like 32 foot wide to allow for parking on one side and for fire truck access. I don't believe the waiver for that had anything to do with the loop. I believe that's.
That was part of my thought process when I was reviewing the drawings. If the water main was looped, it's less of an issue and a concern.
Two issues that, one, you definitely addressed with the no parking and the width of the road. And I believe, at least my understanding was that was the other reason given by Mr. Keene was the fire safety for the length of the road.
So looping it down to Hunt Valley is fine.
No, I never said
All
that.
right, but let's have the board continue with the questions, and then we'll do it that way. Is there any other questions?
I have another question for Mr. Keene. Mr. Keene, and yeah, I don't know if you can answer this or not. If, I know that there's other parcels of land that continue up past Mr. Nolan's property up to, where this new water main would go. If someone else taps into that for development, and maybe it's a question for our solicitor, is there a way that Mr. Nolan gets paid back something for this, running this original line and putting in that investment? I'm just asking the question.
I have heard, and I can't, don't hold me to it,
Uh-huh.
but I've heard that Aqua can do something with that. I've heard that in the past from Aqua. That if somebody connects and they make a public improvement and somebody else connects to it, they can get remuneration, but I'm not guaranteed that that's
Right.
the correct.
I just was curious, that's all.
If I may add to that, we had this discussion with Aqua, and although they said, yes, if anyone connects, you could get some reimbursement back, but when it comes to, at least my experience on this stuff, it's not written in stone or in regulation, it's more of a negotiation.
Right.
So that would have to be in place with Aqua beforehand, before this is approved by Aqua, not by the statute.
So if the developer came, I'm sorry, Dan.
Yeah, you're good.
So if another developer came in, they'd have to negotiate with Aqua that, I mean, I'm getting into the weeds, so I apologize, I'm just curious. So a developer, if they needed to tap into that, they'd have to negotiate with Aqua to do that, and then Aqua would, I guess it would be an agreement with Aqua and this
It
developer.
would either be that or Mr. Nolan before, because this will be Aqua's line.
Uh-huh.
We'll negotiate with Aqua on a per lot or per connection basis, either after the fact or before the fact, in order to establish that there's a legal basis for the new.
Okay, I was just curious, thank you.
Ms. Trina, I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this, but with regards to the 2,450 feet for the water line, where does that compare to the other water lines that you would have required to loop in? Is that kind of the average length, or is this, what I'm asking is this, what we heard from the applicant 2 weeks ago was that this was a very long pipe, it was going to be very costly. With other developments where we require them to do a loop, is it the same or similar linear feet, or is it?
Well, the only one we have recent history is Ellis Preserve. And prior to the first shopping center being built on Westchester Pike at Clyde Lane, We had a 12-inch water line ran from behind Arco Chemical Building, the park garage, ran down Charles Ellis Drive to Westchester Pike, up Westchester Pike to Clyde Lane, with a new 8-inch water line in Clyde Lane. So that was a heck of a lot more than 2,400 feet.
Was there any other examples of that?
That's the most recent one I had off the top of my head. When they built Winding Way, they put a 12-inch water line in there. So that was an extension. There wasn't one there prior to that.
Any other questions from the board? Russo? Robert Lightcap?
No.
Ms. Chanlis? For Carl? Mr. Partridge?
No.
All right, Mr. Gade, the floor is yours.
Well, the one thing I do want to point, not that I would want to, conflict with what Fire Marshal says, but Aqua itself said this was not a requirement. That and they acknowledged that Mr. Keenan was trying to get this loop for a while. They acknowledged it, but they indicated that there was enough pressure to handle this. They also noted that it's not Aqua's, it's not their permit to make. But when we originally first submitted this, there were, to Aqua had these discussions, they said there was enough capability with the existing, either the Hunt Lane or the one that goes behind Echo Valley to serve these, this community.
And that includes the fire suppression. So the 17 houses will get water and they'll get fire suppression from just the water line down the road. There's no need, according to Aqua, no need to go all the way down White Horse Road.
I'm not an engineer, so I don't submit or talk to Aqua. But when you submit these things to Aqua, they're not looking at it from the same light that a fire marshal for a township would be looking at it though, right? They're not looking at it from like a fire safety issue though, are they? I mean,
They
you can
look
push
at it-
back. I don't know the answer to that. I'm asking. So you can push
The
back.
answer is there's two Aqua, it's Aqua's line, so they usually perform tests on there. One for the pressure and one for the volume. And they presented us with the numbers, they gave us the numbers, I do not remember the numbers offhand, but I believe the gallons per minute pressure was like 215, which I understood was enough to handle the fire flow. But I myself am not a water engineer, so I was just going by what Aqua told me that there was enough pressure there.
Sorry, does our engineer have anything to add to the fire marshal or any perspective?
Well, hold on,
You're-
we just cut them off of what they were, we turned it over to them to talk. So let's
Okay,
have
all right,
them
I'm sorry.
finish and then we can go back to Mr. Porter.
I'm curious to know whether the fire marshal knows how much this is going to cost.
I don't think that that's a criteria for what we have to look at, right? We got to look at it, the fire marshal's looking at it from a health, safety and welfare perspective.
My engineers are telling me, my site guys that do this kind of work, $1 million. $1 million for 17 lots. And I don't need it. I mean, it's just totally unfair. And the reason I went from 27 lots down to 13 was because the people I could tell were not happy with 27 lots, although they're the same size lot as I did at Whitehorse up on 252, same size. And those houses are selling for $2 million.
Mhm.
But I cut it back and then I had to add a little bit to get the water line. But if I have to do an overlay, I'm going to spend $1 million for 17 lots.
The overlay would be, this new water line would be in the blacktop of Wayland Avenue. So as they excavated and put it in, the township requires not only to backfill it, but an overlay of at least half. I'm not too sure if it's half the road. It's half the road. Oh, so that would be in another cost. So we'd have to basically pave half, mill and overlay, half of the road of 2,450 feet.
The $1 million is a total overlay.
Understood. Understood. Anything else, Mr. Gade?
No, I have nothing.
Any questions from the board for Mr. Gade or Mr. Nolan? Did you have something, Mr. Sikora?
we own half the road. Dave Porter, owns half the road.
Yeah, White Horse and Wayland Road are owned jointly by Newtown and Easttown.
We own half and they own half.
Yeah, that's correct.
I mean, it's a big difference if I just had to do the water line and put blacktop over the 24-inch ditch. But if I've got to overlay the road for a half a mile, how do you give 17 lots $60,000? I mean, can't do it. You can't do it. I mean, I could go to Wells. I got 2-acre lots. I'm trying to give them a good system, and I'm trying to extend it.
I understand. Mr.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, I don't know if they want to resolve this first or if to me, I'm trying to understand, 'cause obviously this is not what I do. So I have to sort of rely on what our people are telling us, but is the only issue is the primary issue?
Rich, your microphone's on. Can you just shut it off? Or Stephen? No, it's not on.
Is the primary issue what would happen in the instance of a water main break?
Yes, if it was a one-way feed and we had a water main break, it would be out of service until Aqua just repaired it. And it has happened quite frequently because Melmark just put 100,000 gallon pool in with a fire pump on it for their backup water.
Is there any other way to remedy that concern in terms of, other than what you're suggesting?
Other than tying it together with Whitehorse now.
So can I ask, what was your response to the issue of what would happen if there was a water main break?
Exactly what the fire marshal said. If a water main break, you would lose services for a certain amount of people, which is what you typically do when there's a water main break.
But I think to what Supervisor Chanlis is saying is that in those situations, in the other sections of the neighborhood where a water main break might occur, they still have that loop to provide fire suppression because it's looped in, right? Is that what you're getting at?
I'm trying to figure out how common that is versus, I'm basically trying to figure out what your response is to the water main break issue, because obviously this is one I do, so that seems to be his primary concern.
I understand it, and but the one thing that the fire marshal uses is redundancy, and I understand that redundancy is for fire safe. That's great, but the cost of the redundancy in this case is the burden onto. And I know cost is not an issue, but it is. Like you originally asked, is 2450. Is that an average length or a length that would typically be looped? And the fire marshal gave an example, but what he gave an example was along a highly, a lot of residents taps in and there was more improvements around. We're talking about a 17-lot subdivision. So the absorption of that cost for that length gets a lot more difficult than if it's going along a main road where you have lots of commercial businesses that can connect and can contribute and things like that. So I think that's where the issue is the cost per lot that is involved with the 2450. I mean, the development itself, we're already extending 2,075 feet just to service the 1,600 foot cul-de-sac. So this is like an additional 2450.
Is it like a is it a safety issue or is it a convenience issue? Is it like you won't have, your water, which I understand it's on some level having running water is a safety issue, but is it more of a concern of like, life or death safety issue versus, you're temporarily going to be out of water for a couple hours until Aqua fixes it?
Well, last time we had a water main break, it was like 16 hours before it got repaired and we had no water in Newtown Township. So, and it's happened, Goshen Road has had main breaks in the past. So, I mean, it's there, it's happened. That's why I made the comment. Otherwise, I would probably not have, I would let it fly, but it's a big deal. When it happens, how do you know what's going to happen? I don't know. It's a crapshoot. So that's the biggest answer I could give you.
So Carl, Melmark came in here and they put the pool in as opposed to the water tank. Remember we were talking about a water tank for them and then
Yes, they
said
put
we'll
it
a
in.
pool in and
Mhm.
we'll use that as our water tank.
Yes.
So there's no water line for any of the houses. How do all those houses in Berwyn get their
Oh,
water?
well,
They're all wells. They're all wells, the whole side of the street.
Mhm.
So then Melmar put the pool in for water.
if fire water only.
Yeah. So. And I put in plenty of fire water tanks. Because there wasn't enough pressure for buildings I built.
Right.
And I put in plenty of water main extensions, so. If he goes down to Hunt, where does the Hunt Valley Lane come from a different place, or does it come off the new, or does it come out of Echo Valley also?
It's the same water line that they're gonna connect to. They're just running through an easement that's at the back of the cul-de-sac. It's the same easement that
So
runs
then
up to Hunt Valley,
It's still like, then you have two dead end points versus any kind of loop.
correct?
What happens if they loop that line? Like, could they loop it for coming up from? I guess, is it Hunt Valley up the road into the development and back down in Echo Valley? Would that help or no?
It still come from the same dead end.
Okay.
Echo Valley's a dead end water main, that and Spring House and all that down there.
I'm just trying to think out of the
Yeah.
box.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they could put a tank in.
Well, that could be an issue with Aqua. They'll have an issue with that.
We never broached that part, so Fire Marshal's right, we'd have to go to Aqua with that, and we have not.
I mean, obviously, you're not gonna have a community pool in this neighborhood, so it's not gonna be the same thing you could do what Melmark did.
Correct.
I mean, everybody's gonna have, if they have a pool, they're gonna have their own pool.
Right.
This isn't to get extra fire suppression for Melmark, is it?
No,
No.
this is to try to help you out from putting $1 million down the road, try to think out of the box. See if we can help you come up with a different solution by things that I've done in the past and other people on this board have done in the past.
He's using Melmark as an example.
I'm
of
just
how
using
they
that as
thought
an
out-
example. They were gonna put a tank in and then they said, well, can we put a pool in? And it's obviously, they have a different situation. Like people in your neighborhood are not gonna want a community pool.
Yeah, Melmark has put a swimming pool in when they did the last addition at 110,000 gallon water
Yeah.
capacity with 1,000 gallon minute fire pump. So they took care of their problem. So we're not doing for Melmark, Mr. Nolan.
Would that, if they did, theoretically, if they did get a, if Aqua was okay with a fire tank. Now, we still wouldn't be able to service if there was water, if the water main broke. They wouldn't have water, but it wouldn't be an issue of fire safety then. Is
I-
that an option or
I
not
don't think Aqua would permit that unless they had a lot of say to it. And that's gonna probably cost almost the same amount of money.
for a tank?
Mm-hmm. By Aqua specifications, they're a little bit different
Uh-huh.
than putting a swimming pool in. Yeah, they're their own unique company.
Mhm.
Who makes me do the overlay?
Township ordinance, I would suspect. Is that the answer to that? It's township ordinance.
That's one of the things we were looking at. It's the township ordinance, but so. Half the road being in Newtown, half the road being in the adjacent township. And then it's complicated because. That's, north and south division, right? Well, then east and west, adjacent township maintains a portion of the road, the whole road, not. The townships don't maintain the entire length of the road to the halfway point, right? So it's Newtown Township maintains the entire width of the road. And then Easttown Township maintains the entire width of the road after a certain east-west point. One portion of the road was done like 2012, done meaning, repaired and overlaid. One portion of the road, the Newtown side, was more recent, like 2020. I guess the question becomes, what is the, is there a way of avoiding just the cart path itself, right? And running the water line not in the cart path. And then two, how can we minimize with this project, the impact on the cart path? How far to the side can you do it, or can we waive it? I don't know that anybody's, sounds to me like Mr. Nolan said, the biggest problem he has is this overlay issue. Well, if we can work to try to minimize the overlay issue,
But then that brings us to the other sticking point, is the sidewalk. So if theoretically we have the sidewalk, they can put the sidewalk in. I guess the water main can't go on the sidewalk, it has to go on the road.
Typically, you run these forties. The one thing I would say is typically the water does get run in the road and it is a possibility if you shift it over to one side, you could reduce the amount of paving. However, unfortunately, this side of Whitehorse from 252 all the way down to Hunt Valley Lane has utility poles anywhere from 2 to 5 feet off of the curb. So they're all on that side of the road, yes.
And there's no sidewalk anywhere on Whitehorse Road.
We'll get
Or
the,
Wayland
we'll
Road.
get the sidewalk after we'll talk about that, trust me. So let's focus on the water line
Okay.
first.
Another question for Carl.
I brought it
Okay,
up, so
okay.
I brought it.
Carl,
Question if there's a way to
Where-
mitigate that.
where does, in the event of a fire, where does Episcopal get their water from?
Episcopal has two connections to the 16-inch water main in 252. They have a whole private loop system inside their complex.
I mean, I'm looking at distance here. Is it feasible that,
They own the water mains inside their campus. They have 2-meter pits.
Go closer. If I'm reading this drawing, this little map, little purple map, it's showing us 2,500 feet. Down from the edge of Whitehorse, correct? It's where you gotta connect.
Yeah, I think that was extended recently because they built a few houses on the East Town side. So they extended the water main. It used to be dead ended just past I guess it's Bridle Lane that was on.
Yeah,
So,
but
but it's been extended down a little bit more.
But if I'm reading this correctly, and again, it's hard to see, but I assume from the edge of Whitehorse is the 2,500 down to this new development.
That's about right.
If I may, we did locate, there's a plan that we prepared for Aqua to see how long this was, and we did locate the additional water line that was extended down to, I think the address was 2215 Whitehorse Road. And from that point, all the way down to the center line of the new road is where the 2,450 feet is coming from. So that would be the length of the extension along Whitehorse and Wayland for us to connect it. And then from that point, it's the other 2,000, the other 2,000 feet to tie from that road through our 1,600-foot cul-de-sac and then connect into the water line that's in behind 2,700 or one of the properties on Hunt Valley Circle.
So coming from that Whitehorse Road address that you just said,
2215.
what's that?
2215.
2215 Whitehorse Road. So coming down from there. This water line would be adjacent to this development, or of course, you're taking this to the new road, right?
Yes,
The center of that new road.
yes.
So that means, however, what's the length of this parcel that's being subdivided from the middle of that new road to the property edge?
The property edge is, oh, nice one. You called me
Ish.
out. I would say it's probably about 400 feet.
400 feet, so that could be not in the road, perhaps, right? Would Aqua give you permission to run that water main through an easement that this HOA is going to provide with the this land development plan? Two, the next property adjacent to that is Mr. Nolan's property. Is where, he can grant an easement. through that.
I understand where you're going.
And the next one after that is the Episcopal Academy,
Episcopal.
and they would get a benefit from this. They may actually give you an easement too. Can you run this water line right down those 3 properties without even, except for connecting at 2215? And would Aqua give you the permission to run this water line, not in the cart path, and avoid that whole issue of
Well, we'd have to establish a right of way or an easement.
Yep.
And like I said, the one, and I don't know if this is a conflict that is a deal breaker, but like I said, all those telephone poles are anywhere from 2 to 5 foot off that curb edge, all along that end. Yeah, I don't believe there's anything that.
And there's a few hundred feet between the road and the house, right?
Yes.
So even if you're 20 feet behind the telephone poles for a 10-foot wide easement, or 10 feet back up to 20 feet for the easement, 10 feet wide, you're still only in grass. Or maybe you're taking a few trees out, but you're not near the utility poles anymore.
A lot of trees out.
trees.
Well, we're just trying to think out of the
No,
box.
no,
to help
I
you.
understand. I appreciate.
I don't know. I don't know the topography. I just been down there once or twice, but not recently. And I remember it to be like a big horse farm. So but again, I don't know where the trees are. I'm just saying
Yeah.
to you. We know on the lot that the lots you're developing, that shouldn't be an issue. I don't know on the property where he lives now or the other property that was sold to Episcopal. But I'm just, our attorney's trying to say, well, listen, if we go out there, now you're not paving, you're just going through dirt.
I understand. The only thing I would say is I don't think we have enough information on the lots as far as number of trees and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And if there's any other utility easements in there past our development, but
Do you have the ability to say no overlay?
I mean, yes.
It was just paved 3 years ago.
It's your ordinance. You can waive the
Just paved 3
ordinance
years ago.
for a hardship. But right, I mean, that's the.
I mean, if it was coming up down the road to be paved, it'd be a different story, but we can't settle everybody else in town with a repaving a road that's 3 years old. That's what I'm saying. I think.
I don't know
I'm
how
thinking the
much.
easement in the grass area. Obviously, you can look at it. I think that's gonna be saving you a lot of money.
I don't know how much of this length that we're talking about is within the Newtown maintenance side, which was done more recently versus the East Town.
Well, that's the other thing. You might be able to find that out. They
Right.
might not have the same ordinance.
Right. Well, no, it's still our road. It's just a maintenance agreement. But what I mean is because of that split, the other townships portion that they
It's
made.
11 years old.
Exactly. It's not
11
the
years
same
old.
as a 3-year-old road. So it's.
may I make it another possible suggestion? Okay, so you're talking about there's an ordinance that you have to pave at least half the road. What if you would typically when you construct something like this, it's like a 24-foot wide trench. And then I'm sorry, 24-inch trench. What they would, right, what they typically do is they would put the pavement on there and it's rough pavement and they know they would come back and they would put the wear and course on. What if we just have, and I believe Dave, since he's the engineer, there are details that where what you do is you just cut it back an extra foot away from the 24-inch trench and you do a mill and overlay that. That certainly would give you a more stable roadway.
So what Mr. Gage referring to is kind of a key, a paving key where you would do your trench activity, backfill the trench, put temporary paving in or base paving in, and then you would mill out an additional foot on either side of that and then do your full depth paving from that point up. You would get a better product. It wouldn't be strictly compliant with the township's ordinance for the full width of the lane, but it would be something that would be probably 5 feet, 5 feet wide. But it would run pretty much down the center of that lane, 5 feet wide. You'd have some tar along the joints, the paving joints, to prevent water from infiltrating into the road and causing issues with the pavement.
So what does this do as far as the cost factor? I mean,
It would probably reduce the cost of the paving, the final paving, by approximately half, maybe even a little more than half. You're looking at, I think Steve said the road's about 18 feet wide, maybe 16 feet wide in some locations. You're taking a half of that road at 9 feet, and you're basically only going to do 4 or 5 feet of pavement restoration.
So if the $1 million is accurate, it could take it down to $500,000.
I'm not sure what the entire $1 million includes, whether that's the water main plus the paving. I'm sure it's part and parcel of that, but there would be a significant reduction in the paving
The
cost.
paving,
Correct.
do you have a
Correct.
breakdown on the paving versus the water main?
The water main, I think, is like 375,000. Paving is the rest.
So
No,
it'd
there's
take-
600.
So it'd take out 300,000 to 600,000. Get it down.
But we're only dealing with 17 lots.
Just wanted to offer a couple of things for consideration with the board. Maybe the applicant and or Mr. Sikora could speak to this. I know in Chester County, where Pennsylvania American Water Company is the sewer and water purveyor out there, they offer, and they're a public utility. They're regulated by the PUC. They offer what's called a bona fide contribution, but it's for existing residential, for water and for sewer service extensions. I don't know if Aqua has any ability to offer that, or if that's something that could be negotiated with Aqua as part of that, understanding it is going to be new residential development, whether Aqua would consider contributing a portion of that or all of a bona fide contribution to the development. In Chester County, where PAWC does that, I think their water is somewhere like around $19,000 per resident. Sewer is a little bit less than that, but that's something that Pennsylvania American does do in order to help extend water mains for municipalities to get residents tied in. The other question I had was for Mr. Keene, the existing water main to service proposed developments coming from Echo Valley Lane. It's through an easement between Echo Valley and Hunt Valley. That's essentially the connection between Echo Valley Lane and Hunt Valley. That length of line is the concern for the water main break. So if they looped in with Echo Valley Lane, you'd essentially have a line that comes off, and then you'd have a loop, a dead end loop on that same line.
Well, the feed into Echo Valley Lane's a dead end too.
Okay.
It's dead end past Rockwood Farm Road. Just part of list of them.
Gotcha.
After that one, it's all dead end.
Okay.
Okay, what was the name of the alternate? What's the name of the alternate repaving where it's this,
There's
a
a
couple inches on either
it's
side?
called a paving key on either side of the
Paving key?
trench. It's a trench restoration with a final paving key. It provides stability for the final wearing course so that you don't have differential settlement where the trench is. So of course,
Trench restoration with paving key, is that what you would
Yes.
call it as well?
correct.
And I guess the question is, if the board would be willing to do a trench restoration with paving key versus repaving half the road right from the center over. That's that, I know it's not what you want, but I mean, is that acceptable and we can be done with this? I mean, that's it, we don't all get what we want, but I mean, the township sees a benefit to having this. They may make that determination that, you know what, we new roads and maintaining our road system in a pristine condition is very important to us. However, this water situation is important too. They might make the decision, I can't speak for them, but they might say, all right, we're willing to do this trench restoration with key this one time because of this significant expense that you've articulated, that's not typical, right? And it's large, but there's been important reasons that have been articulated by our fire marshal. Does that kind of bridge the gap so that they're not happy, but you're not happy, but everybody can live with it?
At all.
Well, I'm not trying to make you happy. I'm asking, is that something that you can live with, that they can understand you can live with it?
How about the township? Would the township be interested in contributing?
I'm sorry, can you ask that question again?
I said, would the township be interested in contributing to this?
For your project?
Yeah, for what the fire marshal's requiring?
No, it's your project. I mean, I'm only speaking for myself, but I don't know why you would ask the township to put money out for your project.
I'm not.
We just did.
I don't want to do the project.
Well, then you.
I want to bring the water line down my road and end it. I can do that. Aqua says I'm fine.
And our fire marshal,
The fire marshal's requiring me to go all the way down White Horse Road, and I'm saying, why?
well, I think that was already explained to you, Mr. Nolan, and it was also explained in great detail, I think, to the board too. So to Mr. Sikora's question, if the board was so keen to allow you to do the key repavement, would that be something that you'd be interested in for us to get this to move along?
And-
Yeah, you can confer with them.
And just to clarify, that's the issue that would knock the paving down approximately 50% potentially, right?
That's correct.
Dave, what about this situation with Aqua? What do you think the chance of success would be or do you have any idea if Aqua would contribute to this or?
That I'm not certain of.
But that would be something that Mr. Nolan would have to pursue.
That's correct. And of course, the applicant could still continue to pursue that beyond what the board agrees to with regard to this application.
I'm sorry, are you referring to the Aqua agreement?
If Awkward were to entertain a bona fide contribution.
Yeah, and,
Or some monetary contribution to
right,
the.
and if we get to that, when we get to that application, we certainly will discuss that with Aqua, because it is getting them 17 new customers and the potential, however unlikely or likely it is, along Wayland and Whitehorse to get that.
Correct.
Um,
I'm not saying we're done this.
Okay.
I'm just suggesting. The only other issue based on last month was the sidewalk along Wayland Road, right? There's a ordinance provides for sidewalks through the whole development. The applicant is using a stormwater system that benefits there's a benefit to not having sidewalk down both sides of the road, the new road. But then there's the proposed resolution consistent with the prior approval resolution only has a sidewalk going down one side of the new road to accommodate all this stormwater and everything. But there's still the issue of the sidewalk along Wayland Road, which, many board members were inclined to have that sidewalk go through because that's kind of consistent with the way the board always doing new developments. I don't know if there's any possible connection between those two discussions or if they're completely 100% separate, but it sounds like the discussion kind of died on, at least for now, died on the water. Do you want to go to the sidewalk discussion and just table the discussion on the water for now? And then see if any connection does emerge, and if it does, discuss it. And if not,
There's a very strong connection. If you will relieve me of doing a sidewalk on Wayland Road and doing this 4-foot restoration, I'll do it.
So you're saying that if we relieve you from doing the sidewalk, then you'll do the key. Isn't that a double benefit to
Yes.
you? Isn't that a double benefit to you, though?
What do you say?
Isn't it a double benefit to you?
Not really.
How do you figure we would be amending or changing our ordinance, essentially waiving our ordinance to require you to do the whole half of the road, to allow you to do the key, which is a substantial savings, and then you still want to be required to put in the sidewalk on Wayland Road? I mean, from my perspective here.
I'm still gonna spend $500,000
Yeah.
doing this 4-foot. And I'm dividing that into 17 lots.
my thought. And again, I'm just trying to help. guide
Yeah,
the
facilitate
conversation.
us. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I mean, there is a precedent for certain developments where we decided that the public walking is important. But a sidewalk perhaps necessarily isn't, and a walking path was substituted. And one of the things that I know is an issue here was the preservation of trees, because at the last meeting, a sidewalk was going to uproot 100 trees or more, or something ridiculous amount that even our tree commission was concerned about. And if there is a accommodation made for public walking that kind of saves some trees, and it's cheaper than a sidewalk, perhaps, again, maybe there's a compromise in there somewhere.
And I think this is an example that the most recent example that Mr. Score is speaking about, that Supervisor Robert Sykap and I spoke about earlier this afternoon, is what they did at the Newtown Square Presbyterian Church. They came in for a renovation. Again, that we're talking about a church. We wanted them to put in a sidewalk, and working with them because of the cost, realizing it was a church, we decided that they were fine with doing essentially an asphalt trail. So it was a lot cheaper than having to put in the sidewalk. And as Mr. Nease just said, or excuse me, Mr. Scourge just said, it could eliminate the need for taking down the trees and also the potential to move around the utility poles. I don't know how the board feels about that, but again, I think that it achieves what we have said before about walkability. If the board was so inclined, and they all have to weigh in, would you entertain a walking trail, a paved walking trail, as opposed to a sidewalk?
Have you been down to see the site?
I have, Mr. Nolan.
Okay. There are no sidewalks anywhere.
Understood.
No
Continue.
sidewalk. Nobody's going to use it.
I understand.
Except for, I'm sorry to interrupt, except for Hunt Valley Lane that's behind that. So you could connect from the sidewalk that you've got in your development down Wayland Road into the rest of that other neighborhood, and you can walk in that neighborhood and then come back around. I live on a street that doesn't have sidewalks. My street is Hansel Road. It's between Goshen and Mayland Road, right? And you're saying that people don't walk. I have people that I walk all the time down my street because they come down Mayland Road or they come through the Radnor part and through Newtown Square. They go down Hansel Road, they turn around, they come back. So it affords people, because Wayland Road, there is no way to do that. Hansel Road is a wide street. So my argument back to you, I understand going toward 252, there's nothing to walk to now, but there's always development. My point is right now, if you go through your new development and you go down to Hunt Valley Circle, your argument is kind of moot about walking somewhere. You walk into that neighborhood and you can walk around Hunt Valley Circle. That was just my point on that.
But there's no sidewalks in Hunt Valley Circle.
No, there isn't, but you can walk in that neighborhood
Yeah.
because you don't have the
And you can do the same thing
congestion,
with Crum Creek on the other side.
right?
Crum
But
Creek has no sidewalks.
I think he's missing my point. My point is
There's no
that,
sidewalks.
but you cannot, your new development, these 17 houses cannot walk on Wayland Road now to walk into that neighborhood that doesn't have as much traffic as Wayland. Am I
I
explaining
hear what
it?
you're saying.
I got 55 houses in Whitehorse, no sidewalks.
And that is because prior board, for some reason, allowed that to happen. What we're saying now is that this board prioritizes walkability and connectivity.
Yeah.
So to your point, that it would be a sidewalk to nowhere, as I will revisit from 2 weeks ago, the township is a puzzle piece. The township is a giant puzzle. Each of these development projects is a piece of that puzzle. So it might not be connected to something for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, but don't say never. There's a potential that it connects. Look at what we did at
We're doing it
the
now.
Uno. The prior board required them to put in a sidewalk. That sidewalk ended at College Avenue for years. And what's happening now? The township is going to add another segment that would connect to another, what was referred to sidewalk to nowhere in front of the Goddard School, that now will allow a whole entire segment of the community
Another developer doing.
to connect through. Thank you. Another developer. Same thing was true with the Porsche dealership. That you look at the Goddard School. I mean, excuse me, you look at the Porsche dealership. Porsche dealership came in for a renovation for a brand new building. We required them to put in a sidewalk because eventually we want to be able to have people walk all the way down. So your point is, I hear what you're saying, but you have to understand the point of view from the boards is that if we continue to say to developers, no, don't worry about it, no, don't worry about it, then we're never going to have that connectivity. We're never going to have that walkability. So you're asking us for waivers. We're willing to work with you, but in return, we need to get something. We as the township need to get something that our residents need, and it's that walkability. And so that's why I'm saying we don't need to do a sidewalk. If you're open to even potentially doing a walking trail, a paved macadam walking trail, where you don't need to move the potential to move those utility lines and the potential to remove a lot of those trees, I think that's a win-win, just like with the key paving. Because the other thing too, Mr. Nolan, as you've noted, 2 weeks ago, you said no development ever occurs on Wayland Road. Well, we're talking about a development now, right? The Episcopal Academy property eventually will be fields or something that Episcopal Academy does. We have an email from a resident who also noted that the students at Melmark are walked up Wayland Road whenever it's nice out. This would afford them the opportunity to begin further connectivity. It's safer. And you can't tell me that your neighbors or your residents that are going to buy these beautiful houses, you do amazing work. And I'm appreciative of what you do with regards to that. You can't tell me that these residents aren't going to want to be able to walk further than just their street. One thing that we know from COVID is that people want to be able to walk. And as Supervisor Robert Dycap just said, if they get a dog, they're gonna want to walk farther than just 1,600 feet. They're gonna want to walk all around. And by doing this, I honestly think it's gonna help you out, sell your properties. It might be a little expensive up front, but it's gonna be another amenity that they're gonna be able to have.
Let me ask you a question.
Again,
Would you take the money in lieu of?
when I take the money in lieu of,
Yeah, and then
That's
if
a
you think
discussion.
you should do the sidewalk, you go do it.
well, I don't understand, why so adversarial? Right? I mean, so why so adversarial? We'll have the discussion among the board whether we want to take it in fee of lieu of. I mean, personally, I would rather have the developer who's coming in and asking us for waivers to work with us a little bit and put the sidewalk in. But I think right now, we're just, I think we're saying the same thing, but we don't want to cave. I mean, I think that's what that
I have
sounds like.
some questions about the whole sidewalk concept to shed more light on what we're talking about. First of all, how many feet of sidewalk would be required? What's the frontage? What are we talking about here? Jim?
The frontage is about 1,400 feet
So it'd be
along Wayland.
So it'd be 1,400 feet of sidewalk.
Well, it all depends if you're talking about, because we have I could get I guess I'm not gonna do that. All right, so if you have the cul-de-sac, we have sidewalk on one side. And then from there, if you're talking about just taking it from there down to Hunt Valley, you're talking about the entire, because there's another like 700 feet.
Right, so
Past that
because
top.
what I want to know is what we're talking about here specifically, how much and an approximate cost. What are we asking for?
Again, the approximate cost shouldn't be a factor for
Well,
us.
no,
Right.
no, I understand that, but I still want to know, are we asking him to do something that's
Well, we
$10
don't-
million or what?
That's not our response. If you just-
I understand that. I understand.
Yeah.
that.
So Jim, if you have an idea on numbers, feel
Well,
free to throw them out.
first of all, before we talk about an approximate ballpark cost, which I will ask Jim that question. But what are we talking about as far as sidewalk? What's the requirement here?
Are we gonna have to remove the 9 poles and move them?
Well, that's
many-
why we're talking, I think we need to slow down real quick, because I get what Supervisor Partridge is saying. There's three options on the table right now. One is a sidewalk for the full length of the property, which the township engineer, Mr. Porter can tell us what the specifications would be for width on what our ordinance requires. That seems to be, that's scenario number one. Scenario number two is a walking trail as opposed to a sidewalk along the whole frontage. And scenario number three is just a walking trail on the southern, what I'm referring to is the southern side of that property that would connect to Hunt Valley Circle.
Mhm.
Correct?
Or Hunt Valley Lane.
Hunt Valley Lanes.
Where's that? He's talking about.
So then what's the requirement, Dave, for sidewalk?
Just a meandering sidewalk.
Where would you have to put it? Can you show us?
Sure.
And not this?
Well, that's what we're trying to clarify.
Sidewalk would need to be constructed. Here is the development property.
Yeah, if you go, one more sheet, there you go.
There.
So you'd have to construct the sidewalk from where the label on White Horse Road is to the intersection of the new road, and then from the new road down to Hunt Valley Lane.
So is that the 1,400 feet that you talked about?
Yes, and I think one of the other options was don't go north from the new road, go just south, connect the sidewalk that is proposed.
Just from here
Yes,
to Hunt Valley Lane.
yes. That would be another option. I'm sorry, I believe that's what you offered, correct?
To go to the Hunt Valley Lane.
From our sidewalk, not the entire length of our,
Mhm.
just from where our street comes in south and connect to Hunt Valley Lane.
And would that be a trail or would that be a sidewalk?
Trail.
I think it would have to be a trail because of all the trees.
Oh.
That would be the biggest problem.
Right.
Because we'd have to meander.
Trees and poles.
Yeah, well, a majority of it's open space anyway.
Are you okay?
I understand, I'm just clarifying.
Or do you want it on the floor?
All right,
Which part?
I think to the meandering asphalt trail from the new road down to the intersection of Hunt Valley Lane.
And how many feet would that be, Dave?
You want the full line?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question.
Roughly.
Sidewalk would,
Yeah.
traditional sidewalk would be 4 foot wide. I would recommend something that's more along the lines of a 6 foot to 8 foot wide.
No,
something-
no, but what would that length? It would
length?
be we're not proposing the whole 1,400 foot length now, what's the length that we're talking about now?
It's approximately 800.
800 feet, okay,
Plus
just
or
want to
minus.
know where,
Yep.
so 800 foot trail is what we're talking about at this point, right? Just so everybody's talking about the same thing here.
To do that. I'll wait. If the
I'm
board
sorry.
were inclined to do that, and that's just from the new road south
Mhm.
trail. Public easement, HOA maintained. There's still the issue, and I'm not, okay, I understand if the board were saying south down, if the township wanted to extend that up into the future, right, there's, I mean, the township could enforce against the HOA sidewalk requirements, just like any other property owner. Or we could get an easement
That's what I was gonna ask.
for a future trail to extend north, no construction obligation, just
An easement.
an easement to allow that to happen in the future.
That's, I think that's.
Because that's going to
I
be an
think
easier,
that's
that
fair.
would be an
Don't
easier
try to think it's
discussion.
fair, but for an
Future HOA.
easement, for an easement on the other parcel when the rest of that roadway gets developed. An easement doesn't cost you anything right now for that part. It's better than, because we could theoretically make them do that, so. Yeah, literally.
I think that's right. I think that's fair.
Be fine with that?
Ed, you okay with that?
Yeah.
uh, Land development approval that we talked about for the 13 lots. And many of the issues stayed the same. So we prepared a proposed preliminary subdivision plan, approval resolution for this plan. We talked about it. It was all these issues that we've talked about. The only two that were really outstanding was the water loop and the sidewalk, right? So there's before you have a proposed resolution. The only change is if you're inclined to go the way that the discussion, I believe, just went, that's the only two changes that we'd have to make to this. I suggest before that would be read that we make those changes.
And I will let you make those changes, Mr. Solicitor. You do. while that gets drafted, just in the interest so we can keep things moving, we'll go down to 15.3. So we will, can I get a motion to authorize the township manager to sign the planning module for 17 EDUs related to the Stony Knoll development? Seconded by Supervisor Partridge. Motion made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Chanlis. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Is being drafted now. All right, we will come back and we will read resolution 2023-24 preliminary final subdivision and land development for the Stony Knoll development. Supervisor Partridge.
Okay, resolution number 2023-24 preliminary subdivision and land development approval for Stony Knoll, Nolan, south of Wayland Road. Whereas James A. Nolan III, Dynasty Trust developer, has submitted plans identified as Stony Knoll preliminary / final 17 lot subdivision land development plans dated January 25th, 2023 and revised May 10th, 2023 for 17 residential lot subdivisions on 48.787 acres south of Wayland Road. Parcel ID number 30-00-02907-00, map number 30-14-002, and an associated stormwater management report dated May 10th, 2023. Together, the preliminary / final plan. To the Board of Supervisors for preliminary, final subdivision and land development approval. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Newtown Township hereby resolves and conditionally approves: 1, the preliminary / final plan. 2, the following waivers which must be set forth on the preliminary plan. A partial waiver from chapter 148-34A and 148-34F regarding the requirement for sidewalks and curbs internal to the community to allow for increased stormwater management.
There must be a 4-foot wide sidewalk on one side of the new road. In addition, must be a 6-foot wide paved walking path provided from the new road, Hunt Valley Lane, to be owned and maintained by the HOA with an easement for the public. And there'll be an easement provided for a 6-foot wide walking path from the new road towards Route 252 to the property. One question. What we have used. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I would say that,
When we have approved this in lieu of, it's been the 6-foot.
and I would suggest perhaps that, now, if there's a big tree that's going to be lost, and give the township administration the ability to have some flexibility with it.
Yeah,
Save a
I'm
tree.
fine.
Yeah.
So
I'm fine with that.
we'll add that to what we just read.
Now we're on.
Yep.
B.
Yep.
And I'll need you again.
Yep, one more time.
B, a waiver from section 148-27C5 regarding maximum length of cul-de-sac of 700 feet to allow the proposed road to be 1,625 feet with the following conditions regarding road width. C, a waiver from section 148-43B4 to allow storm drain pipe to be high density poly. HDPE rather than reinforced concrete, subject to compliance with the alternate engineer review letter. D, a waiver from section 148-12 to allow for combined submission of preliminary/final plans. E, waiver of section 148-35A regarding curbing to allow for swales in connection with the stormwater management plan. F,
A waiver of the 1/2 width road overlay requirement under chapter 145 of the Township Code, such that a trench restoration 12-inch paving E on each side of the water line trench shall suffice.
3, such approval is subject to the terms and conditions of the aforementioned Township Alternate Engineer Review Letter dated July 6, 2023, the Stantec Letter of May 11th, 2023, and the Fire Marshal Review Letter of May 15th, 2023, as well as the recommendations of the Shade Tree Commission, copies of which are attached hereto and made part of hereof. 4, such approval is also subject to the following terms and conditions. A, developer shall establish a homeowners association, HOA, for the development and provide the final declaration governing the HOA and budget to the township solicitor for review and approval prior to recording. Approval will not be unreasonably withheld. B, the declaration governing the HOA shall provide for the perpetual maintenance of the open space, trails, fences, roadways, right-of-way, retaining walls, streetlights, curbs, stormwater management facilities, and sanitary sewer mains, unless otherwise offered for dedication and accepted by the municipal authority. All roadways in the development shall be undedicated, and the developer desires to dedicate the road, including any subsequently formed homeowners associations shall be responsible for providing services in the nature of, but not limited to, snow and ice removal, street and driveway maintenance, trail and sidewalk maintenance, recycling, street lighting, stormwater management, maintenance, post-construction stormwater management, BMPs, maintenance, and trash removal. It being understood that Newtown Township will not be providing municipal services, and the nature of these services to be provided by the developer and any subsequent formed HOA. C, the paved portion of the road will be 32 feet wide. D, the developer will execute open space restriction and maintenance agreements, which will be recorded with the recorder of deeds. E, the HOA shall secure the services of a licensed professional engineer to conduct annual inspections of all stormwater management facilities and stormwater BMPs, including but not limited to stormwater basins, stormwater conveyance swales, and all other stormwater BMPs, including plantings and landscaping. An annual written report shall be submitted to the township in digital and hard copy. A note to this effect shall be included on the record plan and be provided for in the PCSM O&M agreement and the declaration governing the HOA. F, a blanket easement shall be granted to the township or its designees in a form satisfactory to the township solicitor for all private properties and common areas for inspection, preservation, and maintenance of all stormwater conveyance, infiltration, detention areas, and other BMPs, as well as street trees. G, any and all plantings, including street/shade trees to be utilized for stormwater BMP credits shall be clearly noted on any plot plan that includes a residential dwelling with a note stating that the tree must be preserved and maintained in perpetuity. In the event that a street tree or other vegetative BMP is felled or removed, whether or not on private property, the HOA and township shall have enforcement authority to ensure that the vegetative BMP and or street tree is replaced in a timely fashion. H, all stormwater swales and BMPs and shade or street trees shall be clearly marked on all plot plans with notes detailing the nature and requirement of the feature. These swales and BMPs shall be disclosed to the homeowner at the time of the agreement of sale. I, developer shall be responsible for payment of all fees in accordance with township code, including stormwater management fees, inspection fees, and fees in lieu of recreational lands. Recreational fee is $62,445 for the 17 dwelling units. I, developer shall secure all necessary easements for the connection of the development sanitary sewer system to the public sanitary sewer system prior to the recording of the plan. K, developers shall obtain approval of the soil erosion and sediment control plan from the conservation district with copies to the township engineer prior to the recording of the plans. L, developers shall install an earth berm between lots 11, 12, 13, and 14 and the adjacent properties along Hunt Valley Circle to direct water flow into an inlet or inlets on lot 12 through to basin 2. This berm shall be depicted on the plan prior to the recording and be of sufficient dimensions such that the township engineer is satisfied it is suitable for its intended purpose. M, developers shall obtain an MPDES permit for disturbance greater than 1 acre and submit a copy of said permit to the township and the township engineer prior to recording the plans. N, those shall be sidewalks consistent with paragraph 2A above, and any trees removed for the sidewalk along Wayland Road will be replaced on premises and or there will be a fee in lieu in the amount of $300 for trees to be planted elsewhere.
The word sidewalk along Wayland, it's the walking path.
Okay, rereading and there will be a walking path consistent with paragraph 2A above, and any trees removed for the walking path along Wayland Road will be replaced on premises and or will be a fee in lieu in the amount of $300 for trees to be planted elsewhere. And O, developers shall add a raised inlet grate to the proposed inlet on lot 12 to reduce clogging. Pause. Number 5, developer will coordinate with the township to determine which plans are to be recorded and make any necessary modifications to the plans to implement the recording of the preliminary plan in accordance with this resolution. 6, developer shall obtain approval of the proposed sanitary sewer services to the development from all necessary parties, including but not limited to the township municipal authority, and a sewage facilities planning module approved by PADEP, and provide proof thereof to the satisfaction of the alternate township engineer and township sewage enforcement officer prior to recording the plans. Developers shall also enter into an agreement with the township/township municipal authority for the proposed sanitary sewer system upon approval of the system by the required government agencies. 7, developers shall construct the development in strict accordance with the plan, except as otherwise modified herein. The terms and conditions of this resolution and any agreements required by this resolution. 8, developers shall enter into developers' financial security and stormwater operations and maintenance agreements with the township to be prepared by the township solicitor. Township manager is authorized to execute the agreements when approved by the township solicitor and engineer. 9, payment of all outstanding fees, deposits, and costs owed to the township by the developer shall be made prior to the recording of the preliminary plan. 10, developers shall provide to the alternate township engineer and township solicitor all legal descriptions for all easements prior to recording of the preliminary plan. 11, developers shall comply in all respects with all the applicable township codes, ordinances, and regulations, as well as any applicable county, state, or federal regulation. And developer must obtain all applicable township, state, county, and federal permits, approvals, and/or waivers. 12, developer may come back before the Board of Supervisors for consideration of an alternate water main route. Okay, so we're going to end this with the condition 11 and resolve this 10th day of July 2023 at a public meeting of the Board of Supervisors, and that is my motion.
Motion was made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Russo. I did get a text. The microphone went out, so no one heard it. Can you go through that one more time for us? So the motion was made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Russo. Is there any board discussion? I just want to say thank you, Mr. Nolan, for working with us. Thank you, Mr. Gade. And again, we look forward to another beautiful development in Newtown Township by you. So thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. We'll now move down to section 17, board comment. I don't believe there is any. We'll now move down to section 18, public comment. There is no members of the public present, and we will adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.